Welcome, everyone, to the Leading Together podcast, Insights for Delaware's Tomorrow. In each episode, we sit down with the top minds and leaders from around the nation, and they share their perspectives that help advance FSE's mission, which is to build capacity, raise awareness, and really elevate school board leadership across our communities. I'm Julia Kelleher, your host, and I'm the Executive Director of First State Educate. Today, I'm joined by two amazing women. I'm happy to have both of them here. Recently met them and super impressed by the work that they're doing. Lindsey Halman is the Executive Director of Up for Learning. She spent her entire career as an educator and advocate, creating real spaces where young people are not just heard, but empowered to shape their schools, which is just such a remarkable life's work. Before she started leading Up for Learning, she co-founded the Edge Academy in Vermont. It's a pioneering program that really focused on student-centered and restorative practices. And amazingly enough, I'm also joined by Kiera Bourne-Bey, who is a person who experienced firsthand this work and is now doing it herself. She's a graduate of Concord High School in the Brandywine School District, currently a student at UD. She was a member of the Student Voice and Advisory Committee at Brandywine at Concord during her junior and senior years. She was an original member, like the founding work in Delaware. She was also part of a special project she'll tell us about. It's a participatory action research that she did with the Black Student Union and the United Way around student voice and advocacy. She continued on and is now working with Up for Learning, representing them boots on the ground here in Delaware. So ladies, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited for this conversation. Lots of things to learn from your experience.
Thanks for having us.
Sure.
Great to be here.
All right, Lindsey. Sure. So Lindsey, let's start with you. What drew you to this work? I mean, you've been doing this your whole life. Why student voice?
Well, how can it not be student voice? So schools are for young people. I mean, they spend more hours in school than they spend anywhere else in their life. And we have not changed the model of schooling in 150 years or more. And when I became an educator, that was my core value, is that like, this needs to be a with model, not a to and for model. We are not in a factory system. We're in a world where there's so many possibilities. There's so many opportunities to be learning in different ways, to really value who we are as human beings and what we bring to the space. And there's no one way of doing school. Everyone is so unique. And so in my journey as an educator over 15 years, I was really passionate about building relationships with young people, really understanding who they were as learners, and then co-designing learning experiences with them to ensure that they were engaged, they felt empowered, and they actually felt like the work and the learning that they were doing was relevant to their own lives. And so that was what really got me motivated to, as an educator, and what made me feel hopeful when I woke up every morning, and then what eventually brought me to Up for Learning.
It's fabulous. And Kiera, how about you? What drew you to getting involved in this? It was a new project at that time. I mean, this was like a new thing that Lindsey was bringing.
Yeah, so I feel like with me, I've always had a passion for advocacy work and education. And as being a young person and a student myself, I feel like when it came to the environment that I was seeing in my high school, again, I went to Concord High School, and not only within my high school, but when I spoke to friends within my school district and outside of my school district as well, at schools such as like Brandywine and Mount Pleasant. When I had conversations with them, we were seeing a lot of like disparities when it came to the things that we were learning. We felt like we didn't have a voice when it came to things such as like dress code, what we were learning. We felt like we weren't learning the skills to put us through life, financial skills, things like that. So I originally started being the president of my school's BSU. That's where I kind of started to feel like, okay, this is something that I want to do. This is something that I'm interested in. I used to have like my fellow students and peers come to me and say, well, Kiera, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't like this. I want this to change. What can I do to what can I do to change this, things like that. So I used to actually go and talk to a lot of my like teachers and the principals and basically people in charge and say, well, we're not comfortable with this. And they would tell me like, okay, I think that's when I had first got involved with up, and they said, okay, we see you as a student leader or somebody who has student voice, and that's something that's important to you. So that's when I first got introduced to the student voice advisory. And I think that me being a part of that kind of gave me the tools to know how to say something. Even though I've never been a person who has been afraid to speak up, I just think that me being a part of that kind of gave me the tools to, know what to say, who to speak to. So yeah, that's definitely how I got introduced to that.
It's a great answer because it really leads to the fundamental question here, Lindsey. What kind of change are you working towards? Are you trying to give one person an experience? Because Kiera, she was able to engage and learn and, sort of lean in. But really, all of your work is about structures and models and sort of, it's bigger than one person's experience. She gave a great illustration of how it works, but
Absolutely.
What are you going for? Individual experiences or systems change?
Yeah, it's both. And I would say, like, at the individual level, it's about really helping people change their mental models around school, around the possibilities of what school could be and should be. And also at the individual level, help young people and adults recognize their value, recognize that everyone has a voice, build their skill set, just as Kiera was saying, around like, how do I go about using my voice in a way that's going to create change, that's going to support everyone in this school, not just myself, but my community. So there's the individual change, and we see that over time, how individuals grow with us. And then there's the ripple effect. There's the systems change. We're hoping that through the work that we're doing on the ground or virtually, however we're working, that we are seeing changes in practice, policy, leadership, learning. The outcome should look different. And so I would say, just like, it's not one or the other, it's both and they're equally as important, both the individual change and the systems change. But in order to change the system, the mindset has to change.
Does that resonate with you, Kiera, that you experienced this kind of change in how you looked at things and how others in your high school looked at things?
Definitely. And I think that it's important because we're going to grow up to be the next adults. So if we don't know how to speak up for ourselves, you see what I'm trying to say? We don't know how to speak up for ourselves, then how can we teach our children to speak up for themselves? What about people that want to go on to be educators? How can we teach them how can, our next set of educators teach their students how to speak up for themselves? So I think I definitely agree.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it is one person, but then it really is the system as a whole, because if you do many, many people, then you've sort of really changed how everyone's looking at it.
Exactly. And our whole, like, the fundamental core of Up for Learning is around youth adult partnership. So there's a lot of thinking and learning around elevating and empowering student voice. But what really is niche and for us is this idea of partnership, that there's shared power, shared voice, and shared responsibility in school change. Because we know that youth can't do it alone and adults can't do it alone. We're in a very adult dominated system. And it's not working for a lot of our young people. And it's not working for a lot of our educators and adults and families. So how do we build that shared responsibility, shared power, shared voice in order to create school change? And that's what we feel like is fundamentally the key ingredient is youth adult partnership.
So can you give me an example of how this works, right? Like, what have you seen when young people are really, really at the table and the responsibility, the voice, and the power are truly shared? They're not just there to be a part of a conversation, but they're equal.
Kiera, do you want to go first? Would you like me to go first?
You can go first. You can go first.
Okay. I mean, so we see it on so many different levels, both school-based, district-based, school board-based, statewide. but what it looks like is youth and adults sitting side by side, where there's no one that has more power over the other, that they are thinking about, and I would say they're centering the voices of those in their community. That's fundamental to our work. So we have a core team. Let's take the Brandywine example. We started off with a student voice advisory at each of the 3 high schools. We've now are at each of the 3 high schools, each of the 3 middle schools. And this year we'll be starting with student voice advisories in all 9 elementary schools in Brandywine. So youth and adults are sitting side by side. They're building their mindsets. They're exploring what partnership means. That's kind of building that community, understanding what are the inequities in our community, like getting a critical awareness, because my experience in school could be completely different from your experience in school. So what are the inequities in our system? Then we use youth participatory action research, YPAR, as the way in which we go about change. So we are gathering data, using data to drive change from everyone in the community. And so young people and their adult partners are analyzing the data, looking at strengths and concerns, and then identifying what are the concerns that we feel like we really want to focus in on, and then moving into action planning phase, where they're either working on changing practice, changing policy, changing, climate, culture, whatever the focus is that they've said, okay, this is what our community is saying is a challenge, is a concern, is an opportunity for growth. And then they are working to create that change. So that's how our work happens in every school in every district. And we've seen incredible results.
Kiera, was there a project that you worked on where there was a particular focus on a problem, and then you worked with the adult partners to implement some change?
I would definitely have to say that would be the student voice advisory. That's something where I feel like I was out of all the things I've been involved with, especially because that was one of the only things I was involved in where I was really in like high school, where I had teachers where I was working one-on-one with. Now being in college, it's more so of a different setting. So I'm working with my colleagues at people like Lindsey. I feel like in high school, it was definitely easier for me to see the change because I was experiencing the change firsthand. Because I was a student in high school. I was able to work with my teachers. I was able to work with my principal. I was able to work with other educators, and we were able to, like Lindsey said, sit at a table and talk together. Now, when it comes to the other question, how have we seen a change? When we are in our our group meetings every Monday, we look at data pretty often, and I think to see the data and see the change within the data, I think that's how I see the change, especially me not being in like a high school anymore. So I think that
Yeah, it's great that you're data focused. And Lindsey, you alluded a little bit, or you described kind of in broad strokes to how it started in Brandywine and then how it evolved. So it went from 1 high school to 3 high schools to the middle schools, now it's the elementary, right? So how does something like this, because maybe our audience wants to know kind of how would they do this in their district. So how does it start? A district that doesn't have this right now. What are the first steps and what do they expect?
Well, actually, really what's amazing about Delaware was that there's like the landscape is so ready for this work, because we actually in 2020, we had a reach out from the Delaware Department of Education saying, we have a strategic intent around elevating and empowering student voice pre-K through 12. And we're interested in connecting with you to hear about your work. And from there, we developed our relationships with the Department of Education, and they were like, let's try this. Let's pilot this work. And they said, I think, we have some this is what it takes. This is what it takes to make it happen. We have some interested, willing adult partners in Brandywine School District that are ready for this work. And so I say the first ingredient is really an adult that believes believes in this and has a willingness to give it a try. From there, we connected with adult partners in Brandywine School District at the district level, And we started thinking about what could this look like together. We co-designed it, co-created this model together, the Student Voice Advisory model, and set out some really clear goals and objectives. Like, what is it that they are desiring? What are they seeking? And how are we going to go about this together? And then we piloted with the 3 high schools in our first year. In the second year, we started building some youth leadership at the middle schools. And then in year 3, we really piloted the Student Voice Advisory at the middle school level. So that's been 2 years. And then it's been growing. So kind of this, once one example can be like illuminated, I think other people are like, I want to get on that. I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And what we know from for example, I keep referencing Brandywine because it's been such an incredible model, both from like what we've seen over 3 years of data, and just the partnerships that we have and the relationships.
I think the larger point is that, it evolved over time and you're looking at data and there was a willingness. And I think this, it shouldn't be lost on anyone, really, the idea of when you see it once happen. I think, I could tell you anything. I could describe anything. And the more persuasive I am and the more, skilled I am in my delivery, you might really like it. But, there's a big space between saying and doing. And so I think your point about, it's real, it's a thing and people see it. And then they're like, why would we not have more of this? Like, I didn't know this could be. And now that I see it, now I really want more of it.
That was exactly what my thought was that now there is no district-wide committee or without people saying we need students on this group. So like the Code of Conduct Committee, there was, around, I think here reference like policies around dress code. And so there is no longer the entire like belief and system has changed in that there is no committees without young people on it. And that's what we want to see over time, is that it's not like an extra kind of like, oh, that's really this one group doing this thing. It's just infused into the system. It's part of the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is healthier because of it.
Yep. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit, Kiera, I don't want to interrupt if you had something you want to add, but I have a follow-up question relevant. Okay.
No, you're all good.
So relevant. Thank you. Relevant to FSE, our organization is solely focused and somewhat, I am perpetually looking for new opportunities to support and strengthen school boards across the state. These individuals have raised their hand. They're doing the yeoman's work. It's not a compensated position. It's a lot of public pressure and scrutiny. I think everyone who's raised their hand wants what's best for students and sometimes faces seemingly insurmountable challenges to know how to use their role to be able to make Delaware not 45th and 10th. And so I'm really curious about how student voice on committees and what your interaction is with the school board and how could this be a lever that some school boards in Delaware might want to use to be able to achieve the kind of outcomes that they want for kids?
Yeah, I can start. And Kiera, please feel free to hop in. Okay. So, I mean, right. Julia, you said, everyone that volunteers to be on a school board obviously cares about young people and education. The thing that's missing is that they're not living it day in and day out. They're not in schools. They're not experiencing schools. They've had their own experiences, which might drive their desire to really want to support schools and young people. But the reality is that the people that are most expert at schools are students, are young people. They are the ones that are living it day in, day out. They know what's going on around them, and they should be at the table as partners with adults saying, yeah, this is really important for young people, or no, actually, we're spending a lot of time focusing on X, Y, and Z, but it's really about A, B, and C. And I think the other piece that's really important is that adults show up very differently when there are youth sitting side by side. The conversations really shift, and they become much more focused on really trying to be solution-based instead of just a deficit mindset.
Interesting. Has that been your same? I mean, Kiera, did you have interactions with the school board? What was it like, or administration?
I didn't have a lot of interactions with the school board. I think my work was more so based on what I could bring back to my organization, what I could bring back to the BSU, what I could bring back to the clubs that I was in, and how I could allow them and lead them to make their own kind of change. I felt like I could be a voice for them as much as I wanted to and as much as they wanted me to, but it's like I want you guys to have a voice as well. So if something's bothering you, I want you to be able to speak up to it as well. So I think a lot of the work that I did and a lot of the work that I took from the retreats that from the student voice advisory was what skills can I take back, learn myself, and then teach the people who I am leading. What can they do with these skills?
Yeah, that's great. And if a district listening to our podcast, a district in Delaware was interested, what would you say some key considerations that they should, that they should reflect on and say, okay, is this right for me? Is this right for us now?
Well, I mean, I think it's always right. And I mean, first it's like, do you want a more engaged, civically engaged, school engaged, healthy student body, right? Do you want young people to feel valued, a sense of belonging, a sense of connection to their community? And if the answers are yes, and like, do you feel like, you want to give valuing youth voice a go? I think that that's all that's needed. And then really it's just creating some time and space to make this happen, to really say, okay, this is important to our school. Brandywine has done that. Red Clay is going to be joining us this year, along with some other, we've worked with United Way Delaware, the Brian Allen Stevenson School of Excellence in Georgetown. Can we provide the time and space and focus to really center student voice? And then we're there as facilitators, youth and adult facilitating together, to really support the process of making change by developing the team, by helping them understand how to collect the voices and stories of everyone in their community, and then to use that information to then drive change. So we really provide this on the ground supports to make the work feel more like, okay, this seems really big. How do we do this? But that's what we do. We are, we're experts in facilitation.
Yeah, I think it's important because I interviewed students and a board member, 2 students and a board member who all were part of boards where students were actually on the boards, members of the school board. And the school board representative said that one thing to consider is, if one person isn't ready for this, the conditions for success might not be there. And I'm curious that if a district wants to implement this and there's 5 decision makers and 4 of them are okay with it and one sort of isn't, do you see an opportunity where first they'd educate, because again, our role is training and capacity building, where we could, support by providing access to information and resources? Because maybe sometimes people kind of don't want to do it because they don't know what they're getting involved in. Like it's easier for me to say no because I don't know what's going to happen if you say yes and if I say yes and where this is going to go. So do you think that there's some space for education or kind of awareness building in Delaware?
Absolutely. I think, when there are folks that are resistant to it, it's because they haven't experienced it or they might feel uneasy or uncertain about what will happen if youth are part of this process, right? Like, is it going to go, is it going to just go like bonkers? And so our work is first and foremost, again, is that grounding and like why youth adult partnership. And we use a really straightforward activity that we call I Matter, where we ask people, this is one of the first things that we do with most youth adult teams, is like, think about a time when there was a decision being made that was going to directly impact you and you knew you had something to offer, but you were not asked for your input at all, how did that make you feel? And people, they're like, oh, we've all experienced that before when a decision was made to and for us. And then we ask people to think about the flip side. Think about a time when a decision was going to be made that impacted you and your input was solicited. How did that make you feel? And we take all of those words, and that becomes the centerpiece of our work. And even if there's one person on a school board that is like, there's no way I'm having youth on this board, after they experience these kinds of activities where it's like, oh yeah, okay, their mindsets start to change. The mental models they have about school, about the role of young people in school, they shift pretty quickly. And usually if there's at least one or two people that are on board for it, it can gradually shift the whole culture of a board or a team.
Yeah, really interesting. So Kiera, in your work on the ground now here in Delaware, what's it been like from the other side, now that you're working
On the
with
facilitation?
Yeah.
So I haven't been to an in-person retreat yet. That work starts in September, but I'm really excited. We during RJD, I think one of my favorite memories from that was being able to see students that I led in my high school. I think I was like a senior and they were maybe like freshmen or something like that. And I saw them come on there and I saw them able to speak to me. So I think working with them and then now like helping to lead them was a really like exciting moment for me. But I think that me being able to see even more students from my old high schools, me being able to work alongside teachers. There is a teacher I'm not gonna call her a teacher, but I think she's another adult.
An administrator?
Yeah, like she's one of the higher professionals, administrators. I think it's in Brandywine. Her name is Adrienne Stansberry. She used to be one of my teachers in middle school, and then I worked with her again in high school. And then so to now be working alongside her as a facilitator now as a junior in college, I think that's one of my like bittersweet moments. Like I'm like having like a very proud moment right now. Like I think I took it far with the work that I've done, and I think that's kind of like another like milestone for me, if you can see what I'm trying to say. So I'm definitely excited. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but I just know that I'm really anticipating it as the time gets closer for me to actually do those in-person retreats in Delaware.
It's a wonderful story. It resonates with me because I had the amazing experience of having my first year as a middle school counselor. My 8th grade students were seniors when I was an assistant principal in that high school. And it was really, really nice to see how far they had come. And, you just have a different kind of awareness of how humans change and how important, the one or two things that you do for someone can be. But I think your story also is great because to me, what it brings alive is what I think is intended when you read a district strategic plan that says center student voice. I think there is a will. I think maybe there's just lack of access to the way, but I can't think of an educator that I know that wouldn't want to have their student body, everyone in their student body, have an experience like what Kiera just shared. So that was a great story.
Thank you.
So we're almost out of time. Really quickly, I wanted to ask kind of what's next, what's on the horizon? What's the 25-26 school year look like?
Yeah, so in Delaware, we'll be working with 15 schools in Brandywine School District. We're bringing on the elementary schools this year. We're so excited. We'll be working with Red Clay, and we're going to start with their high schools this year. And we're hoping to continue to build partnerships throughout Delaware. We're really trying to do this intentionally and thoughtfully so that we can continue to that ripple effect to work with more districts throughout the state. I mean, we work nationally. So we have an abundance of work. Our original home is Vermont. So we have an abundance of work in Vermont, in Massachusetts, New Hampshire. We're going to be in Colorado. So we have projects all over the country that are looking very similar. And so we're ready now that school's getting back in session. Yeah.
That's great. Well, hopefully you can use this podcast to share with other Delaware districts to help raise awareness, and anything we can do. Again, training and awareness building for boards, happy to help. But this has been an incredible conversation. I learned so much. Just a few kind of short thoughts before we close out. I love this notion of doing it with and not to and for, and really that you've centered the human experience and valuing everyone's opinion. You're holding out a notion of youth and adults sharing power, voice, and responsibility. I think that's it's a beautiful concept. It's nice to say, but it's really impressive that you've been able to create conditions where that actually really happens. So I wish you all the success in the world. Kiera, I hope you have a great first year here in this role. And thank you so much for what you're doing, what you're doing for youth, what you're doing for schools here and around the country.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And for everyone listening, if you want to learn more about student voice on school boards and in committees, check out our Knowledge Hub. We have a ton of resources over there. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Leading Together. I look forward to seeing you again soon.